In 1969, Chevrolet pulled off something that most people didn't even know was possible. They released an engine so rare, so advanced, and so brutally powerful that it blurred the line between factory-built street car and pure racing machine. This wasn't just another big block, and it definitely wasn't something you could walk into a dealership and casually pick up. No, this was something entirely different. It was the ZL1, an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch monster designed for Can-Am racing, but slipped into a handful of Camaros to satisfy sanctioning rules. Only 69 were ever built, but the impact it left on the muscle car world was absolutely enormous. On paper, it looked like just another Camaro, but in reality, it was a street-legal dragster with the heart of a race engine. And today, we're diving into its story. Because when you ask the question, how good was the Chevy ZL1? The only real answer is legendary. Racing DNA, the origins. Let's start with where this beast really came from. The ZL1 wasn't designed with the street in mind at all. Its roots came directly from the Can-Am racing series, where Chevy's experimental aluminum 427s were already making waves. McLaren and Chaparral were using these featherweight, brutally strong engines to dominate the grid. These were motors built to take relentless high RPM abuse, pushing limits that normal production engines could never handle. Chevrolet engineers, seeing the potential, decided to adapt this racing technology into something they could homologate for production. The result? The ZL1. This wasn't some parts bin special. We're talking aluminum block, aluminum heads, forged internals, airflow engineered for high rev punishment, basically a detuned racing motor wearing the disguise of a factory option. It was exotic, extreme, and unlike anything else available from Detroit at the time. Here's where the story gets even crazier. Chevrolet had a corporate ban at the time on putting engines larger than 400 cubic inches into regular cars. That should have killed the ZL1 project before it even began. But a clever workaround called COPO, the Central Office Production Order, changed everything. Normally, COPO was used for boring stuff like fleet trucks or taxis, but some dealers realized you could sneak in performance combinations that weren't officially in the catalog. Fred Gibb, a Chevrolet dealer with racing ambitions, saw the opportunity. He wanted a Camaro that could dominate NHRA Superstock, and to make it legal, Chevy had to build at least 50 with the engine. Gibb pulled the trigger and ordered 50 ZL1 Camaros under COPO code 9560. These weren't flashy muscle cars with stripes and chrome. They were stripped-down machines, heavy-duty suspension, close ratio Muncie 4-speeds or turbo 400 automatics, 4.10 gears, cowl induction hoods, and plain steel wheels. From the outside, they looked almost ordinary. But under the hood, pure insanity. Of course, there was a catch. The price. The ZL1 engine option alone cost over $4,000. Put together with the base car, that meant a ZL1 Camaro ran about $7,200 in 1969, nearly double the cost of a fully loaded SS396. That made them nearly impossible to sell. Gibb only managed to move 13 before Chevy redistributed the rest to other high-performance dealers. By the time it was all said and done, just 69 ZL1 Camaros were built. And that scarcity is exactly what makes them legendary today. But let's open the hood and talk about what really made the ZL1 special. That engine. This was Chevrolet's first production aluminum block V8, and it weighed just 500 pounds. To put that into perspective, that's about the same as a small block 327, and over 100 pounds lighter than an iron big block. For a Camaro, that meant sharper handling, better balance, and quicker launches. Specs? Brutal. 427 cubic inches, 12-to-1 compression, radical solid lifter camshaft, forged crank, rods, and pistons, all topped with an 850 CFM Holley carb sitting on a high-rise aluminum intake. Officially, Chevrolet rated it at 430 horsepower. Sounds strong, right? But here's the truth. It was a lie. In reality, the ZL1s were making between 500 and 550 horsepower bone stock, and with open headers, some pushed well beyond 600 horsepower. It was deliberately underrated to keep corporate brass and insurance companies happy, but anyone who fired one up knew immediately this was no 430 horsepower car. The idle was choppy, it hated low speeds, and it chewed through plugs and gas like they were nothing. But once you got past 2,500 RPM, the car came alive, delivering a surge of power that pulled hard all the way past 6,500 RPM. It wasn't built for cruising. It was built to dominate, exactly what racers wanted. Performance that shocked the world. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where the ZL1 absolutely humiliated its rivals. On stock tires and full exhaust, a ZL1 Camaro could run the quarter mile in the low 13s at over 110 miles per hour, already making it the fastest production car of its time. But throw on slicks, uncork the headers, and suddenly you're looking at 11-second passes at 120 miles per hour. In NHRA Superstock trim, tuners pushed them into the tens. And by 1971, one ZL1 had even clocked a 9.63-second quarter mile at 143 miles per hour. Remember, this was a car you could technically buy from a Chevy dealer. No exotic race-only body, no prototype label, just a factory option hidden behind a COPO order code. It was like having a Can-Am car in disguise. Against the competition, the ZL1 was on another planet. Ford's legendary 428 Cobra Jet Mustangs ran in the high 13s. The hyped Boss 429 was a mid-13-second car. Even Chrysler's monster 426 Hemi, a name still whispered like a god among engines, usually pulled low 13s. The ZL1 had them all beat. Less weight up front, more horsepower than advertised, and the ability to keep pulling long after its rivals ran out of breath. It was the undisputed king of the quarter mile. And then came the legacy. About 20 of the 69 ZL1 Camaros went straight to the drag strip. Dick Harrell, nicknamed Mr. Chevrolet, famously piloted one at the 1969 Winter Nationals, shocking Mopper loyalists by sending a Hemi packing. Others went on to dominate Superstock and early Pro Stock, collecting wins and rewriting what people thought a production car could do. The engine itself became a legend beyond Camaros. Some ZL1 blocks ended up powering dragsters. Others, unbelievably, went into speedboats. Racers knew. They were light, they were strong, and they were nearly indestructible under racing conditions. But myths grew around the ZL1. The official 430 horsepower rating, everyone laughed at that. It was a smokescreen. Real dyno sheets told the truth. This was a 500 plus horsepower monster. Another myth? That these were street cars. They weren't. They were barely street legal, and living with one on the road was torture. They overheated in traffic, fouled plugs constantly, and sucked fuel at single-digit miles per gallon. The cam made them idle like a wild animal in a cage, and traction on street tires? Forget it! Many original buyers actually yanked the engines out and replaced them with tamer mills, just so they could drive the car. On the street, the ZL1 was brutal, uncompromising, and borderline undrivable. But on the strip, it was everything Chevrolet promised, and then some. Fast forward to today, and the ZL1 is no longer just a car. It's a legend worth its weight in gold. With only 69 Camaros ever built, surviving examples are some of the most valuable muscle cars on Earth. Cars with their original engine blocks are especially prized. In 2020, one crossed the auction block for over $1 million after being reunited with its numbers-matching motor, an engine that had spent decades in a boat. Today, most restored ZL1 Camaros trade between $600,000 and $1 million, depending on history and originality. And then there are the two ZL1 Corvettes. Yes, only two were ever built. One of those sold for over $3 million. Finding original ZL1 blocks today is almost impossible. When one surfaces, it sells for more than an entire new car. Restorers often turn to Yanko cast blocks or modern reproductions, but nothing matches the aura of an original ZL1. So what's the final verdict? How good was the Chevy ZL1? The answer is simple. It wasn't just good. It was legendary.